The stage here, Domenico, Cacciola, Sam Cutler, Tom Gleeson, and Janet Steele, our chairperson. Janet is an associate professor at George Washington University. Her book, Wars Within, focuses on Tempo magazine and modern Indonesian politics and culture. I just ask you to make sure you've turned off your mobile phones and to please keep the exits and the aisles clear during the session. Welcome to our panel.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for coming bright and early and fighting the enormous traffic jam out front. I ended up walking from my hotel, which turned out to be a smart thing to do. And I'm glad to see all of you are here. And I'm really excited about our panel this morning. This is an amazing group we've got here. We have Sam Cutler, who was the manager of the Rolling Stones and the Grateful Dead, among other things. We have Tom Gleeson, who is a very famous stand-up comic here in Australia and has written a marvelous book about his 2 weeks of entertaining the troops, the Australian troops in Iraq. In the Americans' war, let me be quick to point out that it's our war and you all are just there sort of helping out. An important theme in the book, by the way. And we have Mick Cacciola, who is a retired police officer who has an unbelievable story of corruption, exposing corruption in his and to me, rather shocking racism moving here to Australia in the 60s and 70s. So we have lots of things to talk about, and I'm going to ask each of our panelists to talk briefly about their book, and then I have some questions for them, and I want to leave lots of time for your questions because I know that is the most fun part. This sort of sounds like the beginning of a stand-up comic routine itself. We've got the rock and roll stage manager, the stand-up comic, and the retired cop. And what do all of these people have in common? It's not entirely clear, other than that I was racking my brain about this last night. None of them, with possibly the exception of Tom, are professional writers. None of them are authors of books. For all of them, this is their first book, and for all of them, it's nonfiction. And of course, the title of our session is "You Couldn't Make This Up." Well, one of my questions is, for each of them, is: were you tempted to make anything up, and is it all truly 100% factual? And maybe we can start with Sam, who can tell us about his book and sort of fact and fiction in this. Is this all 100% gospel truth?
It's all 100% truth. The Gospels have got nothing to do with it. I mean, when I started writing this particular book, I've written some other ones, but my publisher didn't want to publish Sex for the Over 80s, A Year on the Road with the Grey Nomads. So this became the one that they decided to go with. Now, when I started reading it, I was very struck. I saw a thing on a news thing of Paul Burrell that was Princess Diana's butler, and he'd just written a book about Princess Diana, and this horrible man said, and Diana cried on my shoulder and called me her rock. And I wanted to vomit, and I thought, well, the one thing I'm not going to do is write a book that's anything like that. So that was one thing, that kind of helped me realise what I wasn't going to do. But I was very fortunate in that I worked with the Rolling Stones and I worked with the Grateful Dead. And the Grateful Dead, nobody in Australia really knows much about them, but in America they're as big, if not bigger, than the Rolling Stones. And there's a funny... Yay.
Only Byron.
There's a deadhead.
Only Byron.
Good. Two deadheads. Right. Three. Okay. The thing that was of interest to me in terms of writing a book was how to portray the subtle differences between being the guy in charge of a very famous English band and being the guy in charge of a very famous American band. And here's one little illustration of how different they are. I was on a plane, I was exhausted, just waiting to get 80 odd people on this bloody plane and sleep going from New York to somewhere with the Grateful Dead. And I went to sleep as soon as everyone was on the plane and it had taken off. I just nodded out. And I had a kind of tickle on the end of my nose and back to sleep, another tickle. So I woke up and one of the guys that plays with the Grateful Dead was tickling my nose with a feather. So this was not a good idea, So in the end, he kept doing it. I told him twice not to do it. So the third time he did it, I bashed him right on the nose. And everybody was really shocked in a kind of peace and love California hippie way, like, wow, man, you just smacked Bobby. You know, wow, why did you do that? So I said, because it's not fair. There was this dead silence, and about 20 American people looked at me and said, what the fuck is fair? Nobody understood the concept of fair, the English concept. So it's two very different species of rock and roll animal, the American and the English, and I tried to capture that in this book, amongst many other things.
But before everybody gets the wrong impression, Sam does not go around smacking people.
No, that was in extremis. No,
That's right. One of the things that struck me as so interesting about this book is you are in the middle of all of this chaos, and you are this sort of voice of sanity, voice of calmness.
Absolutely.
And he is, I have to say, he is the most wonderful writer to work with because he's on top of everything. He said to me, we really need to get over there. It's starting at 9:15, and he's a great manager. He's managing all of us.
Well, you see, in a previous existence, I was probably, it was either Napoleon or, you know, it's the kind of Napoleon concept writ large. Once you're a tour manager, what's so wonderful is you are actually, at some certain magic moments, in charge of everything. From beautiful girls to, you know, bikers, drunken
idiots. There's a lot of the
idiots.
beautiful girls in the book.
Plenty of girls.
Yeah. Yes.
That's why I look so haggard.
Well, your personality is, it comes across, well, I'll tell a story. I had to contact all of my writers beforehand, and I debated what to call all of them. And, you know, by their first name, by their last name, with Sam, I called him Mr. Cutler because he has this sort of courtliness about him, and it comes through in his book. And even though he's in the middle of all of this chaos, there's a sort of sense of decorum. And I just thought it would be impolite for me to just presume I can call him Sam. And of course, he wrote back and said, "Please call me Sam. No one calls me Sam, Mr. Cutler, other than my mother." But,
and Janet called me Tom straight away.
I called you Tom straight away.
No, Mr. Gleeson, no sir,
and I
no.
called you Mr. Cacciola.
Am I taking up your time? Just Tom, just straight in there. Very rude, very irritating actually. But that's fine. That's
So
fine.
American.
I don't know the Rolling Stones. Oh, whatever.